You are listening to Black Girl Missing, a podcast that covers stories of black girls who were reported missing when they were under the age of 18. When black girls go missing, their cases are severely underreported in mainstream media. We want to shift the narrative. We invite you to listen, learn, and do whatever you can to help us bring as many girls home as possible. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Please remember to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite platform so that we can keep bringing you the stories of black girls that need to be told. Due to the sensitive and sometimes graphic nature of these cases, we advise you to use caution when listening. We open each show reviewing cases of girls who are currently missing that we call the Aisha Alert. We encourage you to pay close attention, check our social media, and help us help the families who are still seeking answers and long for their loved one's safe return. We'd like to note that we create these lists of currently missing black girls in real time, so by the time the podcast episodes are released, there may have been changes. We will have information on each case posted on our social media channels so that you can stay updated. Deandra Stewart is a 17-year-old girl from Douglas County, Georgia. Deandra was reported missing on May 28th. It's believed she initially left on her own, but authorities are asking for the public's help after exhausting all possible leads from friends, family, and known hangouts. She's 5'7" and weighs about 160 pounds. She has black hair and brown eyes, but it's not known what type of clothing she was wearing when she disappeared. Anyone with information can call investigators at 770-920-3923. Jemiah Wright is a 16-year-old girl from St. Louis, Missouri. Jemiah was last seen on Friday, August 28th in the 11800 block of North Ranch Drive, which is near Lewis and Clark Boulevard and Parker Road in North County. She was last seen wearing a blue tie-dyed shirt, jeans, and flip-flops. She's about 5'6" and weighs 160 pounds and often wears her hair in long braids. Anyone with information about Jemiah is urged to call the St. Louis County Police Department at 636-529-8210. Sky Honchel is a 17-year-old girl from Middletown, New York. Sky was last seen on August 27th at 3 p.m., leaving her job at a shoe store in Middletown, New York. She's 5'4" and weighs 185 pounds. She also has a dark mole between her eyebrows. Anyone having information should contact Wallkill Town Police Department at 845-692-6757.
Welcome back, everybody. So happy to have you again. This is season 2, episode 3, and we are just so happy to be in season 2. I mean, I think it hasn't quite worn off yet how much we love doing this. How are y'all doing?
I'm hot.
I am.
Yeah, it's hot.
It's been a hot summer. Okay, it's hot.
It's been, and not just hot, but like COVID-19 hot.
It's different. Everything is different. It's stuffy.
Everything is different.
I don't like it.
But we gonna.
Yeah.
I don't love
I don't
this.
like it
I don't
either.
love this. But we gonna make it. We gonna be all right.
We are going to be all right because that's who and what we are supposed to be. So, hopefully you're tuning in because you want to listen to Black Girl Missing podcast. And we have a very, very special episode today. And this one definitely has a lot of meaning for each of us. And it's one that we hope that you listen to. And I just want to, again, give a disclaimer that, whenever we talk about these cases, we do so trying not to make judgments, trying not to give into stereotypes or anything like that. We just want to examine what we know, what details are out there, and what facts are out there. So we hope that, when you listen to this episode, you'll rock with us on this.
I would like to give an extra preface to this episode for a trigger warning concerning violence. There will be some graphic explanations of what happened as we move through the stories. I just want to give everyone an extra layer of caution on top of that, and we will get started. Um, on May 29th, 2020, Tallahassee police shot and killed Tony McDade after he fatally stabbed Malik Johnson. And police reportedly didn't even try to de escalate the situation. 19-year-old Oluwatoyin Ruth Salau sprang into action, and she engaged loudly in local protests calling for justice for McDade's lost life. But Toyin's personal life was bogged down by familial conflict and trauma. She had an unstable relationship with her mother that, based on her own tweets, was longstanding and very toxic. She tweeted frequently about her ill feelings towards her family and how they were a direct cause of trauma for her. Now, Toyin tweeted in early April that she had previously left her family's home to move into an apartment and had returned to retrieve some of her belongings. Toyin's social media presence is a bit sparse, but what can be gleaned about her is that her mental health was an issue for her, and she was very self-aware. She had the makings of a prison abolitionist, tweeting that Bill Cosby wasn't solving anything by being in prison. Dating back several years, Toyin would comment on colorism, the safety of women and girls, and the state of Black lives in America. Now, on June 5th, 2020, it is presumed that Toyin went to a protest for Tony McDade and was separated from her friends. She tweeted on June 6th that she had been molested by a man disguised as a, quote, man of God who drove a Silverado pickup truck. Her own words became a chilling reminder of what she'd endured before losing her life. And Toyin's thread on Twitter reads, "Anyways, I was molested in Tallahassee, Florida by a black man this morning at 5:30 on Richview and Park Avenue. The man offered to give me a ride to find some place to sleep and recollect my belongings from a church I refuged to a couple days back to escape unjust living conditions. He came disguised as a man of God and ended up picking me up from nearby Saxton Street. I entered his truck only because I carry anything to defend myself, not even a phone, which is currently at the church, and I have poor vision. I trusted the Holy Spirit to keep me safe. When we arrived at his house, he offered me a shower, and I thanked him and showered, and he gave me a change of clothes. He exposed himself to me by peeing with the bathroom open, obviously knowing I was out of it. I told him about a sexual assault situation that happened to me in March involving Ivan, a 32-year-old Ghanaian man who currently schools at FAMU and lives at 211 Jakes and Patterson. I am currently 19 years old, who tried to force me to give him oral sex and then continued to harass me through text and knocking at my door for days. Going back to the situation that happened to me this morning, I did not fall asleep. He then asked if I wanted a massage. At this moment, his roommate who was in the house was asleep. I was lying on my stomach, trying to calm myself down from severe PTSD. He started touching my back and rubbing my body, using my body, until he climaxed and then went to sleep. Before I realized what happened to me, I looked over and his clothes were completely off. Once I saw he was asleep, I escaped from the house and started walking from Richview Road to anywhere else. All of my belongings, my phone, my clothes, shoes, are all assumably at the church where I've been trying to track since I sought spiritual guidance / refuge. I will not be silent. Literally wearing this man's clothes right now, DNA all over me, because I couldn't locate his house the moment I called police because I couldn't see." Now, that's a lot.
Ooh.
That's a lot, and
Ooh.
there's a lot of run-on sentences. There's a lack of punctuation and things like that, so it's a little bit hard to understand. But she's recounting more than one sexual assault in one thread on Twitter, and it just was like a stream of consciousness where she's explaining what happened to her in really a lot of detail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's super important to just pause for a second and really kind of think of all the things that she's saying. So one, she's poor
Right.
vision, so she's disabled, right? And she doesn't have obviously corrective lenses because she's saying that she
Correct.
can't really see. She doesn't have a stable living situation, so she's couch surfing or whatever she was doing. She was seeking refuge at a
Mm-hmm.
local church mission. So we know that she doesn't have that. So she's and she doesn't have the
Mm-hmm.
money to get a hotel. So financially she's got issues. She's very young.
Mhm.
Okay, these are all factors that go into missing girls and missing women cases, and people that maybe run away, people that are kidnapped, things like that. These are some common factors, all of these kinds of threats that are posed to their current life that puts them in these dangerous situations. It forces them into these dangerous situations, and I kind of want people to just sit with what they just heard from her own
Mhm.
mouth.
Something that really stuck out to me is her saying she is recounting that first sexual assault to the man that sexually assaulted her what seems like moments
Yes.
later, and
Yes.
how callous and, you know, I guess kind of divested from the emotion of it, that he had to be like he wasn't even listening.
No, he was listening, and that's what he wanted,
Mm,
because there are so many predators that will prey on people that have been victims, or that are survivors of sexual assault, because they believe those folks to be defenseless and weak and things like that. And some people will convince themselves, well, if this has happened to you before, you must like it, or there's all kinds of things that go on. And also, there's and again, we are not doing anything around blaming or anything like that, but there is I remember I was talking with a therapist friend of mine, and kind of this idea of bully kids syndrome, in that when people experience so many types of trauma related to their interpersonal reactions, their need to find something safe and kind makes them reach out
mm-hmm.
like
Yes.
indiscriminately,
Yeah.
right? And kind of cling to people who offer the slightest hope,
Mm-hmm.
the slightest kind of kindness. And I'm not necessarily saying that she was susceptible to that, but given what we've learned about her mental health status, it wouldn't be surprising that she reached out to this person who showed this level of kindness because she just wanted
Mm-hmm.
somebody to
Mm-hmm.
care, considering what happened. And then there are the people that are on the other side of that
Right.
look for that.
Mm-hmm.
They look for the people that are vulnerable like that. And the minute she disclosed that she had been assaulted before, this person knew that he had an in, and he went for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's disgusting and
And
happens
Toyin
so
had a
often.
very clear faith in God, and she believed that she would be covered. And when she says, he came disguised as a man of God, thinking this person is going to protect me because God sent them. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times when
Mm-hmm.
people who are
Mm-hmm.
experiencing a mental health crisis, they tend to reach out to religiosity and hold it close to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying
Mm-hmm.
that people shouldn't or should be religious. A person's belief is a person's belief, but there's a removal from reality that comes with that, because you are resting
Mm-hmm.
solely on
Mm-hmm.
faith and saying, I don't have anybody else. I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have anything. I have nothing. I have nothing to stand on. I
Yeah.
got to remain faithful to God in some way so that I can believe that I can move forward. I can go on. And it leaves you so vulnerable to a lot of really predatory
Mm-hmm.
people. And we know that there is a strain of predatory behavior in the church. It's just true.
Mm-hmm.
It's just true. And it's
Absolutely.
like, however you
Absolutely.
feel about religion, about God, it doesn't even matter. It's like these are facts, and they've been going on for decades and
Yes.
decades. And
Yes.
it doesn't matter
Yes.
like the race, the denomination, the location, none of that. We see it happening. So watching
Mm-hmm.
someone
Mm-hmm.
look at this woman and think she's completely vulnerable, defenseless, has nothing, I can take advantage of this. That is absolutely
Mm-hmm.
disgusting. And the thing about that I keep thinking about is Toyin was vulnerable in a lot of ways, but was still giving
Mhm.
herself to the fight for Black lives. She
Yeah.
was still giving herself
Yeah.
and her voice and her body and putting it on the line. Like there's videos that were shared of her at these protests for Tony McDade. Tony McDade was a transgender man, and being that him and her really, they're both members of very vulnerable populations that are often marginalized and exploited in a lot of different ways. And she could have said, well, I got to worry about me right now, but she didn't. She put herself
Mhm.
vulnerability aside. She, she's literally was experiencing homelessness really because she had left her family.
Mhm.
This apartment she had moved to, a few months prior, she clearly was not living there anymore. And she was staying in a church and still found her way to a protest to use her voice for somebody else. And it's, we do that. We do that. As Black women, we do that. We could be in need and still will extend ourselves to somebody else. We still will do things for others. And it's that part of humanity that makes it difficult for me to understand people who are bigoted. And it's just like, you can't find a way to care about anybody else or do anything for anybody else. And I don't feel like there is any power in martyrdom. Um, but Toyin may have been using protests and these opportunities as a way to disconnect from what she was going through. Let me find something
Mhm.
else to do, anything else. Um,
Mhm.
but I feel like she had a lot of conviction for what she was saying. She's on video talking about how she's profiled no matter what she's doing because she's dark skinned. She has
Mhm.
immigrant parents. Her family is from Nigeria. Um, and she had very short hair. That matters. A lot of people will, when you're a darker skinned Black woman, you have short hair, people look at you a different way.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And a lot of the pictures that we ended up seeing afterwards were from a
Yep.
lot of her model shoots
Mhm.
where she had longer hair, she had wigs and weaves. And I thought it was interesting, the various manifestations of her, her aesthetic. But let's go back to what happened. Like, let's get there because
Mm-hmm.
we could talk about
Mm-hmm.
this
Mhm.
all day because there's so
There's a
much
lot of
here.
angles and a lot of moving parts.
There's so much here. Let's oh gosh, but let's try to get through this if we can.
Now, when Toyin went missing, the last time she tweeted was June 6th. She was reported missing a couple days later by friends, not even by her family, by friends. Her family did not know she was missing at first. And apparently she had gone missing from a bus station. And she was with an older Black man. And there is security footage that shows her leaving this bus station with this older Black man, and they get into a white sedan that is driven by an older white woman. It is later found out that this white woman is Victoria Sims, and the older Black man is Aaron Glee Jr. Now, Aaron Glee Jr. has since admitted to assaulting repeatedly and then murdering both Toyin and Victoria Sims. Now, according to the police, Glee called Sims, who he knew from being an AARP volunteer worker. She also worked with people experiencing homelessness in Tallahassee. And he said she would occasionally give him rides and bring him meals and things like that. And Victoria Sims picked Toyin and Aaron Glee up from this bus station and drove them to Aaron Glee's home where she dropped them off. And there is the video footage that confirms that this is exactly what happened. Now, soon after they arrived at his home, Aaron Glee told investigators that Toyin took a shower and then he tried to have sex with her and she refused and fought him off, and he says that she bit him on the arm. Police allege that Aaron Glee confessed to overpowering and assaulting Toyin before tying her up, and he kept her imprisoned in his home for about 5 days. He untied her only for meals and to bathe. and he admitted to sexually assaulting her numerous times during um, him keeping her hostage in his home. And he
Mm.
allegedly, he said he realized that he would probably go to prison if he let Toyin go free, so he had to kill her.
Okay.
Yes.
Can we pause
Mm-hmm.
for like 2 seconds?
Yes.
This is a black man
Mm-hmm.
going to jail for raping a black woman.
Yes.
He thinks. He clearly doesn't know the
No.
world that we live in. Okay. I'm not being
No. This,
glib at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
yeah.
really thinking about this, that this was actually a fear of his. And that's the sardonic asshole that I've become, that I just don't believe that, because we know, first of all, rapists don't go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
The number of rapists that are in jail is about 1% of all rapists. So we already know that when it comes to arrests, convictions, sentencing, all of that stuff, we can easily say it don't happen, because comparatively, it just doesn't happen. But we do know that because of the racist justice system that we have, that when black men assault white women, or white people, I should say, they're more likely to be found guilty of their crimes than when they do black women. And we have seen, and that's any rapist, actually. And we've seen this. This happened with Daniel Holtzclaw, who was the police officer in Oklahoma, who had been able to sexually assault at least 13 women, if not more. Go on, because nobody would believe them, because some of them were sex workers or they were drug users or whatever. Then the man who is the most notorious serial killer in the history of the United States is a black man whose, victims were primarily black women, and he was not caught until he did it to a white woman. So that, I think that it's really interesting that in his mind, he felt that he'd end up going to prison if he let her free, and that was the justification for that. And part of me, if I'm going in his mind, which I don't need to do because it'll take me to another place, but there was a white woman witness.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Because Sims was there.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me is thinking that he knew that if the white woman was to live too and tell the story, he'd definitely be going to jail.
Yeah.
And I hate to think like that, but we
Yep.
kind of have to.
It's we have to think about the hard stuff that makes our feelings have to kind of move to the side for a minute. Otherwise, we're never going to get to the bottom of any of these.
And the irony is that she was a
Yes.
prison abolitionist.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is what really kind of messed with me about the whole Aaron Glee thing. When you are a prison abolitionist, you don't believe people should be incarcerated. You don't believe in carceral ramifications to people breaking so-called laws or, committing crimes, things like that. Now, Aaron Glee, just before he kidnapped and assaulted Toyin, was arrested May 30th and released on June 1st after attacking a woman.
Because the system don't work. System don't work.
A mere 5 days before she went missing, he attacked some lady. And I'm sorry, 6 days before, attacked a woman, just on a corner near a bus stop, and physically assaulted her. Now,
did he get out on bail, or what was it? What was the situation? Was he just released?
Like, on
what
a
was
signature bond, so he didn't have to give any money. But my thought behind that is, no, he shouldn't. Some people are thinking if he was locked up, Toyin would still be with us. I understand where they're coming from, but I can't sway away from my beliefs just because of that one little tidbit of information. My thought is, how come he wasn't on like house arrest or something?
I mean, you can't rely on the same system that let him out after 2 days to somehow, like, we can't rely on that system to somehow bring about justice and protect anybody if that's what they're willing to do. Like, it's such a paradox. Like, you cannot look to even have the conversation there. The bottom line is that if the system worked, if the system was protecting, victims and people that have dealt with this, then he would not have been able to walk around freely and have access to Victoria and to Toyin. But because it doesn't, because he was freed, that means that we can't trust that system to do anything. So we can't even be like, well, if he had been locked up. No. We can't even think that way.
And that is the part that you need to focus on.
He wasn't. That's the bottom line.
It ain't about no ifs or no shoulda, coulda, woulda. It's too late for that.
Right. And then
that's too late for that.
Because even if that was the case, he would get out someday. And since there's nothing reformative about our quote unquote justice system, it wouldn't have been Toyin.
It would have been somebody else because he clearly had a pattern. This is a pattern of behavior for him because it wasn't the first time. There was even some newspaper outlets had interviewed people he had dated in the past, and there was a woman from like 10 years ago who was like, oh yeah, he was terrifying when he was angry, and I had a son, so I had to make sure I cut all ties with him, and I was scared. If this is something that you're doing 10 years or more prior, this is how you are. You just weren't caught before.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You weren't caught, or your victims may not have felt comfortable coming forward. We don't come forward a lot of times because nobody helps us anyway. So what's the point?
Right. And then we also feel like we don't want to be responsible for, the disproportionate responses to these criminal activities. You call the police because your partner is slapping you around, and then they come and shoot your partner.
Correct.
Dead on the lawn.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You didn't ask for that, but because if your partner is Black, there's a good chance that's going to happen. So, that's a lot of the reason why we don't call.
I want to mention the very graphic and very involved way in which Aaron Glee carried out killing Toyin and what he did to Victoria Simmons, because I feel like this kind of speaks to the fullness of the pervasive way in which men harm women. When Aaron Glee decided that he had to kill Toyin, otherwise he was going to go to jail, which you're in jail anyway, what are you saying? But that's neither here nor there. He bound her with rope in a manner that he felt would obstruct her ability to breathe, and he left her in the bedroom. Over the course of several hours, he checked on her to see if she was still breathing, and if she was, he would walk away and leave her to suffer. He tortured her to death. He made her suffer. After assaulting her multiple times, he tied her up in a haphazard way until she lost consciousness. After he figured out that she was dead, he untied her and threw her body in the woods behind his home into kind of sort of like a muddy pit. After that, he kidnapped Victoria Sims and he bound her with rope, ransacked her apartment, and fled in her vehicle. Which he took her back to his home in her car, killed her very brutally and left her in the house. And then her car was stuck in the mud, so he had to leave on foot. So he planned. He said, I'm going to go to her house, make it look like a kidnapping or whatever. She probably put up a fight because these are the type of people she's used to dealing with. You can't be completely soft and still deal with people who have mental health diagnoses, people who are experiencing homelessness. A lot of those people tend to be very abrasive, and they can be very rough. And you have to know how to deal with them. Like, I've been there, you've been there. Like, we know what those people can be like. And
man.
So he killed her, and he tried to flee in her car, but when he couldn't because it was stuck in the mud, he left on a bus. He made it all the way to Orlando, Florida from Tallahassee before police caught him. The only way that he got caught was when police traced Victoria Sims' cell phone to Glee's home on June 13th, which is where they found her under a bloody sheet in a bedroom, and they found Toyin's body in the woods behind his home, covered up with leaves. Now, this was not some panic crime of passion where he didn't know what to do. He did know what to do. He planned it out.
Right.
He planned it.
And it seems like he's done this before because he knew what to do with the rope. He knew how to dispose of bodies. I don't believe that this is the first time.
No.
Neither do I. And he had an ex-girlfriend who gave a statement to a local newspaper in which she said that she felt like he had the makings of a serial killer. If you have the makings of a serial killer and you're
a serial killer.
And here's the thing about him. He's older. He's in his 60s, I think.
That was an older man.
You not new to that? You didn't just start acting like that.
You didn't. Yeah.
I truly believe he's killed people before. But
49. He's 49. That's damn near 50 years old. He's still old.
Too old to start behaving this way. Like, you've been acting like that.
Right.
And I truly, it was difficult. Like, we've been working on this episode for weeks now, and I couldn't get it out because just her entire story is just so sad. It's so sad. She's just a kid, 19. She was just getting started. Right. She didn't even have a chance, and she had a great foundation when it came to her politics, her message, the way she moved around. She was solid in her conviction, and that's not easy to do at 19. At 19, you aren't always sure about that kind of stuff. I was all over the place at 19, and I definitely wasn't sure about my personal politics the way she was, and it's something that bothers me because she felt alone. When you read her tweets, she doesn't really tweet at anybody, and nobody really tweets at her. So she really just kind of seemed to be tweeting into the abyss. People who say that she was a close friend of theirs, I have yet to see her in a photograph with another person.
That's very interesting.
So,
that's very interesting because that's how we found out about this. Was there was a she was reported missing, and there was a whole online campaign with her pictures and have you seen her, and that's why we picked it up. Like we started paying attention because whenever we see stuff about Black women or Black girls are missing, and even though she was 19, we were still kind of like obviously we care, so we started noticing that, and we were like, okay, well, who is this? And I'd never heard her name before. And I know a lot of folks across the activist circles and, different cities, and nobody I knew of her. Right. But that doesn't mean anything because you don't have to be a superstar. Right. I just watched one video and I was like, okay, this girl is a force, and I call her girl because she's so much younger. But that's how it even got on the radar. She was reported missing. People knew her. They were familiar with her in the activist spaces. And nobody had heard from her. I even
know people in Tallahassee. And I said, are you familiar with her? And they were like, nah, I've never heard of her before. She kind of came out of nowhere. So that tells me that her just kind of looking into what's going on around her, that activated her. Somebody didn't usher her in. Right. She was activated just organically watching, Black people lose their lives via state-sanctioned violence. Like, she was watching that and said, I have to say or do something, and she did.
Right. And there was this one video where she was talking so passionately, and it feels like she was speaking for herself, kind of almost pleading her own case, pleading for her own life. And like, even before reading her tweets, like, I knew that there was something else going on with this young woman and this passion that she was bringing to this particular speech that she was giving. And she was talking about her own skin and her being Black and living in her body and things like that. But I've given 1,000,001 speeches, and you can be very perfunctory. You know how to perform and do the cadences. And sometimes you just pour everything you have into it. And that was what I noticed about this. And I was like, there's something with this young woman where she is not just speaking on behalf of Black Lives Matter or even Tony or anything like that. This woman is speaking for herself. And that's really, really poignant.
And I've been reading her tweets for weeks, and I went all the way back to pretty much the beginning of her account, and I just was reading and reading and reading, and she said things. I mean, and she's 19, so I did the math, and some of the stuff she said, she was 14, 15 years old. But she would say things like, I literally hate my family. I don't think my mother realizes I'm not like my brother and will never be. I hate my mom so much. My mom thinks so low of me and it hurts. My mom's the most selfish person I've ever met. Do you guys know what it's like to have your own parents plotting your downfall? Now, I was a teenager once. We were all teenagers once.
Mm-hmm.
There's a time in your life where nothing that your parents say or do makes sense. FJ, you have a teenage son. Right now, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff you say that he's gonna be like, oh my god, if she don't get out of my face with this.
And then some things he say that I be like, boy, I brought you in this world. I will take your ass out.
However, with Toyin,
but
it
is what
I've watched these tweets literally not change from 2015, 2016 up to 2020. She kept that same energy. She kept these same messages. So that's how you kind of can tell this is not just teenage angst. There's something going on there. There is a disconnect between her and her family. I saw people commenting and saying that her brother has sexually assaulted her. I could not confirm that. I cannot say that that's what happened. I don't know. That could just be a rumor. I don't know. But it was very clear in her tweets that there is a rift between herself and her brother and herself and her mom.
It's also interesting. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's also interesting. You mentioned the religiosity. Her name on Twitter was Virgin Girl Toyin.
Yes.
Right. And I thought that because I read through, some of her tweets, and there was a lot of heavy, religious talk, Christian talk, and some of it, could come off as judgmental. Again, she's a teenager, is what it is. And people with deep faith sometimes tend to be a little judgmental of the world, but I thought that was really interesting that her name was Virgin Girl Toyin, but then she's got this history of like repeated, sexual violations by men by the age of 19. And being able to connect with that is, I'm sure that there's many of our listeners who, may feel triggered by that. I mean, I definitely can relate to that as well. There becomes this part of you that, you start wondering, like, why am I alive? Why am I still here? Why am I put on this earth? What am I here to do? And I remember I became an activist at 19. And that was the thing that always really struck me about this story, was that she was 19 years old. And a lot of why I became an activist and got activated in these things is because I had to find some reason to live. I had to find some reason to continue on, because I could not understand why all the things that had happened to me in my life until that point had happened. Like, what did I do? What is my, what did I do to deserve this? And I can only imagine that there was some part of her that, felt that way. She didn't lose her faith. I lost mine, but she didn't lose her faith, and was so committed, and she pivoted. Like you said earlier, she kind of threw herself into this. And that just makes this even sadder.
It really does.
You know what I mean?
I think there's been, like, after people found out she was killed, there was this online push to call her a martyr, and it's something that didn't sit right with me, because I from what I could tell, she wanted to live, and it wasn't her sacrificing her life to this cause. This was someone who came in and brutalized her. It wasn't the state that came in and did it. It was somebody she looked to for help. And I kind of feel like when we push martyrdom on somebody like that, it strips away bits and pieces of their humanity, and you no longer get that empathy.
Absolutely. And I think also people don't know what these words mean. We know that. People use words, they have no idea what they mean. Like a martyr. Like, I've heard that. They said the same thing about George Floyd. I'm like, in what world was George Floyd a martyr? Like, there's no such thing. You can't do that. This is a young woman who was a victim of these terribly unfortunate circumstances and events, repeated events. You know what I mean? And before any of you energy manifestation type people start saying that, she was attracting it or drawing it, because I've seen that. I've seen people do that to folks. That is not the situation here. Okay? The situation is that this is a young, dark-skinned black woman who fell victim to the plagues of society. She fell victim to misogynoir. She fell victim to this rape culture that we live in, this entitlement that men feel to women's bodies. She was a victim of all of those things. And I really hate how sometimes we get into these deifying spaces, these glorifying spaces. There's no reason for this woman to be dead. And so to kind of deify or, put her up on this pedestal, it's like, no. This happens all too often, too common. And part of the reason why we don't know a lot about it, the reason why we started this show and why there's tens of thousands of missing black girls and women in the United States is because people don't care to even look into this. We know this wasn't his first time. So how many others have there been? How many unsolved mysteries of women and maybe even girls has he done this to?
This is racist ass Florida. Like,
okay.
This is Florida.
Okay.
Now, there's also another detail that I almost missed, but in the police report about this surveillance video from this bus station, Aaron Glee approached Toyin. She did not approach him. She didn't come up to him asking him for help. She was sitting and he sat down next to her and started talking to her. Now, she tweeted back in 2019 in June, she said, "I don't talk about this a lot, but I actively suffer from PTSD stemming from childhood experiences, and it makes me very socially awkward. I remember a time when I couldn't hold a conversation or would always stumble over my words when asking everyday questions." So, as somebody who can be a little socially awkward, I myself, I identify with that because I also have PTSD and I can be socially awkward. I'm not really a social butterfly. Y'all are my friends. You know me. I'm just fine in that corner. Leave me over there. I'm good. Yeah. I truly am happier just being left alone in the crowd. And if somebody walks up to me and talks to me, and I can't speak for her because I didn't know her. Everybody's stuff isn't the same. But I know if I'm sitting by myself and a stranger walks up to me, as an attempt to not seem so weird, I will throw myself into that conversation.
Yeah, I get that.
It's what we were talking about earlier, like the bully kid syndrome. Like you try to overcompensate for it.
So yeah, I'm going to engage you if I have the energy to. I'll, okay, hi, how are you? But if you don't have anywhere to go, you ain't got no money, you ain't got your phone, you don't have anything with you. A lot of her leaving her stuff at the church was based on her paranoia of not wanting to be without her belongings. It was, I'm going to leave my stuff here because I think it's safe. But if I'm walking around with my belongings, somebody can take them from me. So she's defenseless. She doesn't have her phone. She doesn't have anything. And people were saying, well, how was she tweeting? And it literally said that she was tweeting from the web.
Yeah, so she's probably at a library or something like that, or it just maybe somebody else's house or somebody's computer.
So she was tweeting these tweets. Her last tweets, she tweeted from the web. It's not hard to find a public computer. You can find them anywhere.
Right.
They're everywhere.
You can even go into an Apple store and like log into, log in and just type whatever you want to type, whatever. But on the surveillance video, it was a few hours after she sent those tweets that she started talking, that she was at the bus station talking to Aaron Glee. So there was a few hours in between. So wherever she left and then went to this bus station, she probably felt like this man might be sent to help me.
Yeah, and if you've never been homeless as a teenager, I can speak directly to that, because in that same age and year, I actually experienced that. And you learn the places that you can go where you can avoid the rain, you can avoid the cold, you can avoid the heat. The bus stations, the train stations, the libraries, the churches, the internet cafes, the bookstores, any place that you can go and be for a few hours and not, really catch anyone's attention, that's where you're going to go. And that's what you do to survive. And that's what she was doing. And then if you don't want to appear like you're by yourself and homeless and alone, you'll talk to the people around you.
And
to make it seem like you're a part of the scene.
Also remembering she's 19. Like for a lot of 19-year-olds, the hyper awareness, the street smarts, the understanding that everybody is not, no matter how someone appears, that can be just a facade. That may not have fully kicked in for her.
No, for sure. And like some of her tweets show that she was quite naive about a lot of things. And well, you're 19, you can't even legally drink.
Right. And I think
I'm not saying that she would have drank, but
a lot of people tend to forget this when speaking about young women or girls. They completely subtract the age from their behavior, and they're thinking about these girls' behavior in terms of what their adult brains would do. And it turns into like some victim blaming. Why didn't she know better? Why did she do this? Why didn't she do that? And it's like her brain isn't fully developed. Like
Also, on the day that Toyin went missing, it was rainy and hot that day. So she's trying to get out of the rain. But yeah, I hope that there's some questions answered in this episode. I hope that people can extend some grace to Toyin. I hope that we can take care of each other a little bit better moving forward. Because I feel like if she had a better support system, maybe a lot of the events leading up to her death would not have taken place. We don't know. But I just wanted to make sure that we got her story out, and that somebody who genuinely cares about what she's going through or was going through is told, and is told in an objective manner. Black Girl Missing Podcast is researched, written, and produced by 3 concerned Black women who want justice for missing Black girls. Today's episode was written and produced by Nikki Irene, and the Black Girl Missing theme was produced by Siraj Khalif. Be sure to follow us on social media. On Twitter, we're at Black Girl Missing, BLK Girl Missing. On Facebook, we're at Black Girl Missing Pod. On Instagram, we are at Black Girl Missing Podcast. Visit our website for more information about each case, blackgirlmissingpod.com. Contact us on social media or email us at blackgirlmissingpodcast@gmail.com with any tips, feedback, or names of girls you want us to look into.